All right. So first things first, give me your both of you guys. Just give me your full names.
James Dumeister.
And I'm John Dugan.
Okay. All right. So how do you guys know each other? You guys been brewing buddies together, or home brewers, or how do you guys make the connection to form the company?
We used to work together at a speaker manufacturer.
Really? And now you're brewing beer. How'd the whole idea for Harvester come about?
I was making homebrew, and then I started making homebrew for friends who were celiacs, and then it just turned into a business.
And how about you? How did you go from working at a speaker company?
Well, when James started homebrewing in his garage, just making regular homebrew beer, I started hanging out, and then a couple months later started homebrewing with him there. And then kind of one thing led to another. When he was starting the business, I was always kind of hanging around a little bit, and then happened to be in the right place at the right time to kind of jump on board at the beginning of it.
So gluten intolerant, is that the correct term for it, or?
For a lot of people, yeah.
Yeah. And are you no. Gluten? Okay.
No. My wife is, but I'm not.
So how did you get the idea for gluten-free beer?
I had a friend that I drank a lot of beer with that became very, very ill, was in the hospital repeatedly, and it turned out that she was a celiac. And so I started trying to make gluten-free beer after tasting the beers that she had available to her.
Because I imagine they were pretty awful.
I don't want to say that.
So describe for me the process then. I mean, a lot of folks who listen, to this show have a kind of a basic concept of how beer is brewed, but obviously when you're talking about gluten-free beer, there's a much different process. How does it work?
Well, we're taking a different approach than a lot of other people making gluten-free beer. We're actually making it very similar to regular beer. It's just that we needed something to replace the barley. We came up with another ingredient, which is roasted chestnuts, to replace the barley. And we use them in the process, just like any of the breweries in our neighborhood do with their barley. It's just that it's a different ingredient.
Okay. Roasted chestnuts. Who would have thought? I mean, how did you come up with that?
Just a lot of online searching and experimenting with hundreds of ingredients. Looking at hundreds of ingredients, experimenting with 20 or 30 of them, and just seeing what worked.
What sort of things did you experiment with before you settled on chestnuts?
Just easy, obvious things like squash and different kinds of vegetables, different kinds of syrups. A lot of the syrups, that are used in brewing, but trying them out, but using them in lesser amounts and things like that. Mixing them with just, other grains that are gluten-free.
Now, are you brewing the beers, the style of beers that people come to expect around town, the IPA, stout, porter, that sort of thing, or do you have to go a little differently on the recipe just because it's gluten-free?
No, actually, I mean, specifically, that's kind of our goal. Is we wanted to make Northwest ales like people are accustomed to having in Portland, or Seattle, or Northern California, or whatever. So we wanted those like hoppy, crisp, flavorful Northwest ales, not just like a lager or whatever other people were offering.
And what's the reception been like so far? I know I see your bottles in a lot of places around town.
The reception has been fantastic. People are excited to have it. People, they're excited to have the variety too. That's one of the great things about being a beer drinker in Portland is the variety, and we're giving that back to people that can't have barley-based beers.
Is there a learning curve, I guess, for lack of a better term, to when maybe they taste your beer for the first time and go, okay, I mean, is it an acquired taste, or do you want people to just be able to dive right into it?
I mean, people should be able to really dive right in. I mean, our goal is not to make good gluten-free beer. It's to make good beer that happens to be gluten-free. And some of the highest compliments that we get, and fortunately we get them fairly frequently, are, if you wouldn't have told me, I wouldn't have known it was gluten-free. Like, it's just a good pale ale, or it's just a good red ale. And that's really been our goal the whole time.
You hear a lot of buzz these days about gluten-free beers, and is this going to be the next big thing for Portland? Is it?
I don't know if it. Yeah, I think it could be. It's certainly a growing trend. And I don't think it's a fad. It's something that's going to come and go, like these huge high alcohol beers, or there's kind of seasonal trends. But I think it's just a growing market as more people, kind of become aware of, issues that they might have with gluten.
And do you guys still have day jobs in addition to working here in the brewery?
No.
This is it.
Wow, congratulations. So did you manage to quit the real job and start making beer for a living?
Yeah.
How's that been for you?
It's been great.
I don't know. It's been a heck of a learning experience, for sure. But a lot of fun.
So other than home brewing, you guys really didn't have much, in the way of experience before you got into the business?
I've been in manufacturing nearly my whole life, starting with a family business when I was a child, and we had a machine shop, and I've always worked in manufacturing. To me, this is just another type of manufacturing. It's a lot more fun because it's food, it's beer, it's a great industry to be in. But my background, I think, did prepare me for doing this. And John being an engineer and having experience in manufacturing as well, he's in the same position.
Now, I had a bottle of your experiment ale last week because I knew I was going to be doing this interview, so I had to do a little research. And I've showed it to a couple people in the meantime, and the reaction I get is, "Wow, I've got a friend of mine who should probably try this out because they need to have gluten-free products, and so they've not been beer drinkers." So, do you anticipate a whole sort of new crop of beer drinkers out there with gluten-free products like this?
Yeah, well, one of the interesting things when I started making gluten-free homebrew was that I ran into a lot of celiacs that, they drank beer, it was okay, they had it at camping trips, and then they gave it up, and all of a sudden they're trying my pails, and now they're hopheads. I'm turning, casual former beer drinkers into like full-blown hopheads now, and things like that, and that's really fun, is introducing them to like new styles of beer, just from, that new interest, and what's really available to them, when it gets limited.
Where do you see the gluten-free thing going? Are there going to be more folks like you getting into the business and just doing strictly gluten-free? Are more of the existing guys going to be doing a gluten-free beer? Where do you see the trend?
Yeah, I think there might be some realization on the part of some of the bigger guys that this is a market that needs to be addressed, and they'll bring their offerings to the table. And I think you can kind of compare it to the craft beer industry, 10 or 20 years ago, where, it was kind of an emerging market and people were realizing that, people really enjoy this and people really like it, And I think one of the things that we can bring to the table as a smaller brewer is just being, more nimble and be able to come out with all kinds of different varieties for people and offer the kind of variety that craft beer drinkers have come to expect, but for the gluten-free audience.
It's awesome.
Any final thoughts? That pretty much takes care of my questions.
I think that's it. I mean, we could direct people to our website for basic information, and probably Facebook for the latest up to the minute on styles that we're coming out with.
And I know I've seen the experiment ale, and is that what it's called? Am I getting the name right?
Yeah, the experiment ale label is like our label that we're using for short run beers or one batch beers, and we're hand stamping the style on it. And that one has the red ale in it, but based on the response to that beer, people really seem to love it. So, oftentimes at a tasting in like 3 hours, 2/3 of the people say that's their favorite. I think we're gonna make the pale, the red, and the dark our standards, and most of our beers will then be variations on those three. So the experiment ale going forward it'll be like the pale with different yeast or different things like that, but it'll always be hand stamped on there.
Okay, all right. So obviously I've seen you guys in bottles. You're around town. On draft, is there a way like on the website or on Facebook to find out where you guys are pouring?
We don't have any current plans to be on draft actually.
Okay, so you're strictly in bottles, huh?
Right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Good deal.
The bottles give us a way that we can ensure the quality of the product all the way to the customer, especially with concerns about cross-contamination you could run into with draft sales. So we're confident because we have our own bottling machine. We put it in a bottle here, and until it gets to the customer, we have 100% confidence in